What is up, YouTube friends and motorcycle enthusiasts? This is Accelerate coming to you once again, and I'm going to talk about my 2017 FZ09 and why I chose it. Look how beautiful that bike looks. Absolutely love it. But why should I talk about it in a parking lot? Let's get out and go for a ride. Gotta love a stock exhaust. So why did I choose an FZ09? Better yet, why did I choose to buy a 2017 FZ09? Well, there's a lot of reasons. So I'll start with reason number one. Reason number one is the comfort of the naked sport bike. So a little backstory on number one. I've only ridden sport bikes and owned sport bikes up until I recently purchased my FZ09. Thanks for staying in there, lady. I've been riding bikes, like I've mentioned before, for a long time, and I took a break from riding. And since then, I'd only owned sport bikes, so whenever I decided to get back into riding, you know, it made logical sense for me to buy a sport bike. Because, you know, I like sport bikes, the look, the handling, the power. You know, who doesn't like sport bikes, right? If you're into performance, which I am a performance-minded individual, then I'm into sport bikes. So with that in mind, that's what I went looking for. Now I've owned everything's from 600s, liter bikes, you know, fuel injected, carbureted, yada yada. So, you know, I wasn't going to get a 600 again. My last sport bike was an R1, so I went for a 2010 CBR 1000RR, which I absolutely loved, and I'll throw a picture of it up here. And the CBR was amazing. You know, the last CBR I had ridden was my 600 F4i, which had been quite a few years ago. And, you know, the new design of 1000RR blew my mind. There was a problem with it, though. And it had nothing to do with the bike. It had everything to do with me. The issue with the bike was that I couldn't ride it for more than about 40 minutes without my hands going numb. You know, not so much a lot of people complain about their back aching. You know, I didn't really have back problems with the sport bike. Really, a lot of it was my wrists and my hands. My hands would go numb. And, you know, constantly shaking out those hands, you know, oh, geez. And it just took away from the fun of the bike. It just, you know, I couldn't ride it for very long before I was, you know, before I was like, man, get me off of this thing. And, of course, you know, the other problem with sport bikes is the amount of power that they make for the street. So, you know, you're in race mode, ready to rock, right? But you're going 30 miles an hour because you're in town, and that's, you know, it doesn't fit, right? Sport bikes are designed, they are racing motorcycles for the street, and they're designed to be ridden aggressively or on a track, which is exactly their purpose. So, you know, and lots of people ride sport bikes a lot, and hey man, more power to them. Like I said, it had nothing to do with the bike, it was more about me. And the fact that I'm getting older, as much as I didn't want to admit it. So, you know, I started looking around, and it was that I literally owned this bike for about a month, and I'd already started doing some stuff to it, and, you know, I was throwing money at it a little bit because I was excited to own it. So, it was creeping into my mind, you know, that I can't ride this damn thing. Like, this sucks. I mean, I want to ride more. You know, I want to get out there and ride. Like today, right? Beautiful day. Look at that. And but I couldn't ride it for more than 30 to 40 minutes, and I was just in pain. So you know, it crept into my mind, and I started looking. I started looking for a solution, and that's when I found the wonderful FZ09. So what I found was this whole world of these things called hyper nakeds. And the idea is that it's essentially a sport bike that is upright. It still has sporting intentions, but it's more upright, it's more relaxed. It has a handlebar, right? It has lower rear sets. And, you know, can they do everything that a sport bike can do? Of course not. You know, if it could, then it would be a sport bike. Engineers are very good at their job. But what it does is it compromises. And for a street bike, that compromise is extremely welcome. So number one for me was comfort. Now, number one, pace, it's a broad canvas, right? Because there's a lot of naked bikes out there and a lot of comfortable bikes out there that I could have bought. So I wanted comfort being number one. And the next thing it brings me to is number two, which is torque. So it's not just torque, but it's also torque with power. You know, I didn't want to compromise, right? Whenever I wanted to get another motorcycle, my biggest fear was that I would buy something and not be satisfied with the power. And for many of you that know me, know that I'm a power junkie, right? So I like performance, and there's a limit, of course, but at the same token, you know, I didn't want to spend my hard-earned money on something that would leave me wanting, which is the same reason I bought the 1000RR. You know, I went straight for the throat on the power. So, you know, I wanted power, but what I found with the FZ09 is that it's not the most powerful, but it has that torque, right? It has the triple engine, the 3-cylinder, and I didn't really know anything about triples, you know, being out of the motorcycle world for a while. You know, I've heard of V-twins, obviously Thumper, you know, big cylinder dirt bikes, you know, big CC dirt bikes that are out there. And then, of course, V-twins, which are typically cruisers, which are known for having a lot of torque and that initial grunt. And then, of course, the inline 4s, which most sport bikes are, that a lot of them have torque, but they don't have that initial pop, right? They're still inline 4-cylinders that you have to get them up in the revs comparatively, right? So it's all about being, you know, relative in comparison. So that triple landed somewhere in the middle. And every review I read, everybody said that this engine was an absolute gem, right? This engine was an absolute gem, and lots of people have ridden triples. Of course, you all know the Triumph Speed Triple, a very popular triple engine. Ducati has some triples, I believe, you know, some of the Italian bikes. But, you know, everybody that had ridden the Yamaha FZ09 said, man, this engine is just great. There's so much torque on tap. And, you know, I really like that. I like that concept, that idea of having all that power on tap, right? So that was something to me that was very appealing, to have that grunt, right? Because let's be real, on the street, having that torque, having that grunt, it means everything, right? It's just like having a race car or a race engine that you got to wind out. Well, that's typically the type of thing that works for the track really well. But when you have that initial grunt on the street, you can get up, get out of the way, and do what you need to do. So that was number two, right? There's the torque and the power of the engine and the way it delivered the engine, right? So next is number three, which is the cost. So I didn't want to spend an arm and a leg on a motorcycle. In fact, I was really looking for something used. And the used market for sport bikes is fantastic, for any motorcycle for that matter. just because, you know, motorcycles in general usually take a pretty big hit in depreciation. They do, you know, for the most part, unless you're buying a Harley. Even Harleys do somewhat, but, you know, unless it's some sort of niche, desirable, high-end bike, you know, most of them, motorcycles are much more disposable, even so, more so than cars, right? So, you know, I was looking for something that wasn't going to break me, which kind of led me away from the Triumph. You know, everybody's talked about how amazing the Triumph is. You know, the ergonomics were not quite sport bike, you know, still more comfortable. The, you know, the engine was also fantastic, made a ton of power, but whenever it came to the price, you know, rough patch. Whenever it came to the price, they just, you know, they're expensive motorcycles. So the FZ09 definitely fit the bill in that area. So which brings me to number 4, which is the technology. Now, the technology of the FZ09 is new for 2017. You know, pretty much all motorcycles that are newer are fuel injected. I would not want to buy a carbureted motorcycle. So, you know, that was a no-brainer there. Pretty much anything I bought would have been fuel injected, just because pretty much all street bikes are fuel injected now. So that was easy. But, you know, rider aids and a lot of the things that have been something that only high-end motorcycles had in the past, they're now more readily available with street bikes. Those things being traction control, ABS, driver selectable power modes, things like that. Now, I'm really not one for those things. I don't feel like I need them per se. But let's be real. If you're riding something that runs an 11-second quarter mile, and you have the option to have traction control or not have traction control is better, right? I mean, you know, stability control and traction control is probably the single most modernizing safety technology in the past 20 years, right? I mean, there's like the seatbelt, and then there's traction control and stability control specifically for cars, right? For automobiles. Now, of course, that technology has bled down to motorcycles, and it just makes things more safe and makes things more confident, right? So, no, I'm not Nicky Hayden, man. You know, as much as I like to think how amazing my skills are as a rider, they're just not. You know, I'm a street rider, I'm a street guy. You know, all of us, the majority of us, have a lot to learn, and most of us, our bikes can ride way better than we can, right? We need those things. So whenever I was looking at the technology for the price and the power and the comfort of a bike, the 2017 FZ09, you know, the revamp that they did, the things that they gave it was just, you know, it was a no-brainer. It was like, you know, I was really looking at, buying a used FZ09. I was looking hard at it, and what kept me coming back to the 2017 buying a new bike was the fact that they had changed so much. And you know, the old FZ09, it got that cult following because it was a great bike, and every single person that I had ever either talked to or you know, read the reviews, read obviously YouTube, right? We read all the reviews and all the different channels, and everybody said the same thing. They're saying that this is what the FZ09 should have been. You know, the things that they updated and the things that made the bike, that they did to make the bike better for the 2017 was all when it was the way that everybody wished it had been. And So, you know, for me, it was hard to justify. I was saying, you know, I was looking at low mileage 16s, 15s even, and you know, a lot of the time the price was a couple thousand, right? The difference, even with the depreciation hit, you know, it wasn't that much cheaper. And I looked at the 17 and I was saying, you know, look at how much more I'm getting for buying a 2017. So those are the four reasons, right, guys? So those are the main reasons why I chose a 2017 FZ09. I am 100% satisfied with my purchase. There's still a lot I want to do to this bike. You know, I've kept the mods very basic. You know, I've only done a few things to it, and more things will get done to it over time, but I'm also in no hurry, right? Because this bike is just so good out of the box. You know, it really is. I'm more than pleased with it. My concern with power and things of that sort were all put to rest whenever I actually rode it for the first time. You know, like, and that's where a lot of times we have issues as being enthusiasts. Let me get around this guy. Gear indicator. That's another thing that's great, right? So, you know, that's something that we struggle with as motorcycle enthusiasts, because, I mean, unless you have a really big dealership in your local area that does those ride days or whatever the case may be, a lot of times you don't have or you know someone with a similar or the motorcycle that you're interested in, you don't get to ride the bike that you want to purchase. You know, you're laying down your hard-earned money. So, you know, it's tough. It's a big struggle. So, you know, for anybody that's out there that is thinking about getting an FZ09, specifically the 2017, I mean, everybody knows that the FZ09 is a great bike. But, you know, as it went up in price a little bit, and then as they revamped it, a lot of people may question the 17s and say, are they worth it? You know, I hadn't ridden any of the older ones, but I can say that the new things that they changed with 2017, well worth it. Another big change, which I forgot to mention, was the slipper clutch, and that's huge, right? That's technology that usually only sport bikes have, you know, and they have that balancing, right? That budget and technology and what it costs for the manufacturer. So, you know, if anybody's thinking about buying one, I highly encourage, if you can get out there and ride one, or you can get to a Yamaha ride day that they do those big test days. If you have a larger dealership, that you have that ability to do that. So I personally adore this motorcycle. This bike is going nowhere. I will not sell this motorcycle. I expect this motorcycle to last for a very, very long time. You know, it's my plan for motorcycling is to add to, not to replace or take away. So until next time, guys, I thank you for tuning in, and I hope everyone has a fantastic week. And this is Accelerate, signing off.